In today's episode of Growing Your Tree of Prosperity, I'm going to start on a series on introducing the concept of financial independence to someone who is a beginner. Before I begin, I'd like to talk a little bit about why is financial independence a worthy goal. And a lot of young people find that some of our workplaces are becoming more and more toxic. And the nature of the kind of work that we do has already become very banal as well. Some people are stuck. For example, when I was still working, my last task was in public sector procurement. And the work is very boring, very repetitive, and often requires a lot of rework, right? And making matters worse, for a lot of people in Gen Z as well as the older millennials, you find that your day jobs become more unstable as you approach your 40s. And obviously, at this point of time, artificial intelligence is ensuring that the value of the degrees that you have is degrading very quickly over time. So if you look at the recent retrenchments declared by Microsoft, as I understand it, it has impacted most of the high-skill software engineering jobs. All right, so this is something that a lot of people are very concerned about. And that is why in the past you've heard some famous people talk about financial independence. We have presidential candidate Ng Kok Song, who talks about financial independence, building up an asset for yourself, would give you optionality on what you want to do with your life. And very recently nominated MP Kelvin Cheng has spoken a little bit about why financial independence is very important. So what I want to do over the next few episodes on this video is to explain step by step what actually is financial independence and how do we attain that from a perspective of someone that's actually trying to come up with at least some kind of a plan to make sure that, you know, if your workplace becomes untenable over the short term, what can you do in the future? All right. So before I begin to talk about financial independence and what it really stands for, I'd like to talk about the conventional solution when somebody becomes unemployed in Singapore. And as it currently stands, the government believes in creating a trampoline to support you. And this is a little bit different from a safety net. The government wants to create a trampoline for you to bounce back up, right, after you become unemployed. So this means about 6 to 12 months of living expenses in cash reserves, actually up to 2 years, right, within your lifetime. All right, there are also skills future credits as well as mid-career training benefits. But as it stands, it's still very risky as you arrive in your 50s, as companies might not be open-minded to hiring you. And we're no longer talking about a 50-year-old being replaced by 2 younger workers who are in their 20s. We are talking about a 50-year-old, right? We're talking about maybe 4 to 6 50-something-year-old workers being replaced by one fresh graduate who's proficient in artificial intelligence. And these are the kind of numbers that we are dealing with at the moment. And this is only the beginning, and we are going to see a lot of news on retrenchments around the world. And Microsoft being just one of the companies that's been talking about removing some stuff from their headcount lately. Many other companies, even if they are not retrenching workers, they might not be renewing contracts. So it's something that I hope that the listener would be aware of, right? Okay, so that is the conventional solution. Okay, you have on your own build up 6 to 12 months of living expenses in cash reserves, and then after that, hopefully some of the government programs, the mid-career transition programs that allow you to attend a full-time course for half of your previously drawn salary. These combination of schemes would be able to help you be unemployed for maybe up to 2 years in total. All right, but very, very risky still. Okay, and it's better to come up with something that is a lot more sustainable over time. Okay, so how does financial independence work? It's actually a very simple game to see whether can you, within a certain number of years, generate enough investment returns to cover your living expenses, right? So you can imagine your horizontal line as your expenses, and as you build up your investment assets, they generate an investment income on a regular basis so that over time they will slowly grow and hopefully it would reach crossover point at a reasonable time, right? And once your crossover point is reached, you can say that, I have the financial freedom to now redesign my life and I've gained financial independence. It is actually that simple, all right? So in my case, I was able to reach the crossover point at the age of 32 after I realized how this game works, right? When I was a kid, I've always been very obsessed in the 80s and 90s with this thing called the Australian fixed deposit that my dad was talking about. And I was telling my dad that if you win the lottery and you win $1 million, then the Australian fixed deposit is able to generate enough interest to support the family for an infinite number of years, right? Yeah, so I was a precocious little kid and I was like talking to my dad about this Australian fixed deposit. So when I grew up and I was exposed to my first real estate investment trust, I think that was Capital Mall Trust in the year 2003. I went through the same kind of epiphany where if I could collect enough dividend stocks and generate enough investment income, and if it's able to sustain my lifestyle as a single bachelor, I am effectively free. I'm untethered from the expectations of society. I do not need for people to care what I do in life. I can do whatever I want. And that is absolutely the kind of freedom that I long for, even though at that time, the freedom that I was looking for was actually the freedom to become a millionaire, right? The freedom to farm my income to make my portfolio bigger so that it would eventually reach $1 million, all right? So I'm sure Gen Z and the millennials are wiser than that, right? The whole point is for freedom is to actually use it, maybe travel around the world, go overseas to get a some sort of a lightweight kind of commercial assignment, whatever you want, right? And that's why financial independence is such a hot topic today among young people. Okay, and the idea for this financial independence and retire early movement came from this book, Your Money or Your Life. All right, and you could Google this, Your Money or Your Life. Okay, and what this book does is that this is the first time this crossover point table has appeared. Okay, this is a very, very dry book to read, so nowhere as entertaining as the Robert Kiyosaki series. Okay, and you could Google it, you can find a copy of the book. All right, I promise you, you will not enjoy reading this. Okay, it doesn't contain investment tips. Okay, it's just a very hipster philosophy to life. Okay, which I actually don't really agree with. All right, given that I have actually used my financial independence to start a freelance career that I enjoy. Okay, so how does financial independence work in practice? So there are 3 things you need to do in order to become financially independent if you're a beginner, all right? And it's not too difficult to do that, okay? The first is to earn more money, the second is to save more money, and the third is to invest better, okay? Now, all these 3 things must happen at the same time for you to have a decent chance of getting financial independence within the next decade. So this is definitely not a get-rich-quick approach to life. This is in fact a very much of a get-rich-slowly kind of approach. So if you're looking for some stock tips to miraculously make you some kind of a millionaire, maybe you should listen to the crypto bros instead, alright, instead of listening to me, okay, right? But this is how I did it. So the first thing we need to do is to ask ourselves this question: how do we actually earn more, right? Over the long term, you're going to be very relaxed, very chill like me. In the afternoons, I can go for a swim and play with my son after school, right? But within the immediate point of time, right, you have to ask yourself this question: can I do more overtime? So what I did was I spent a lot of my weekends studying for the CFA in a data center, waiting for the backup tapes, all right, to be able to run, okay, right. Gen Z has also come up with a system of overemployment where you work for a company but actually you're working for multiple companies at the same time. I really love this idea, alright, even though it's probably not welcomed by HR departments. You might be fired if you get caught. You might even be sued if you breach some kind of contractual agreement. But I think Gen Z and the millennials have no choice, alright, because it's so easy to get retrenched, right? Why not be employed by 2 or 3 parties at the same time? It's probably a much safer kind of position to be in. And of course, find a side hustle, right? I'm constantly looking for side hustles still. I'm looking for lecturer roles in a polytechnic, hopefully in another university, right? I'm always looking for something else to do. I'm also developing an artificial intelligence course for kids, and you can write to me to inquire more. Marketing will begin very soon. Okay, and do take note that you have to realize that at least for single people, you spend a third of your time, right? You spend a third working, you spend a third sleeping. So that final 8 hours where you can do whatever you want, that's very important, right? You can use it to create a side hustle, you could monetize it, but if you use that 8 hours playing computer games, then it won't do very much for you. Okay, so how do we earn more, right? This is a question you need to ask yourself. There are many experts out there on the internet, you can refer to them. I don't consider myself one of them. Next, how do we save more money? This is to me the more important skill, right? Because if you are good at saving money, then it's faster that you will attain your financial independence because you simply need less. Alright, so how did I do it? When I first started out, my economy rice was 3 meat, 2 vegetables. Then I cut down to 2 meat and 1 vegetables. And then 2 vegetable and 1 meat, right? And once you get to that stage, you're ready to level up, right? I became vegetarian, right? I started taking vegetarian bee-hoon, and I cut my costs even further, right? For Gen Z and millennials, many of them pack their food to work. Some don't even eat, right? They engage in intermittent fasting. So this is the price you need to pay to gain financial independence, right? You need to reduce the amount of consumption you have, right? By a lot, right? You start by targeting maybe 10% of your expenses, but eventually you want to bring it down to 20 to 30%, okay? But I can tell you, right, it would not work if you need to exert willpower to be frugal, right? Frugality has to be a way of life. You need to genuinely embrace it, and you need to revel in a more Spartan existence. How do we do that? I don't have a genuine answer to that, but if you look at the other influencers who's able to attain financial independence, you find that they are not materialist in nature. You know, some are maybe a little bit spiritual. Others simply don't see the need to own something as part of their personal identity. How do we do that? Well, I don't have a secret on how to do that. I was materialistic when it comes to owning role-playing games, so my hobbies are actually very cheap. Alright, owning a car, owning a Rolex watch has never been a very big deal to me, right? And I think that's a huge competitive advantage I have against other people in the workplace. Okay, and finally, how do we invest better, right? Do we invest in more equities? Do we engage in diversification or rebalancing? And that obviously I'm not able to talk about it over one video, but I will dedicate an entire video to investing better to gain financial independence in the next part of this series, hopefully maybe in a week or 2 weeks time. Alright? Okay, now one important point about financial independence is that it's one of those rare things in life that you don't need to succeed. Okay? You get married, you find a spouse, or you don't get married. It's a 1 or 0. Also the same when it comes to getting a degree, right? You need to graduate with a good honors degree, or you don't. Okay, but when it comes to financial independence, the good thing is you don't have to succeed in it to benefit from it. Okay, so even if you give up halfway, if you can get your machinery, your asset class, to generate some income for you, you would have won. Okay, because the regular income you get from your investments will complement your earned income over time, and that would be able to raise the quality of your life, right? So it's something that you can give up, right? Given your life situation, like maybe if you are freshly married, you might not need to be able to be so fanatical, right, in your pursuit of financial independence. You could tone down for a while, and maybe you can pick it up again after your first child, right? So you can do that. Okay, so this is not something that you have to succeed, even though when I was engaging in it, I would tell you I'm quite single-minded, all right, when it came to financial independence. Okay, all right, and that sort of sums up our discussion for today. What has not been discussed yet, and they will probably be discussed in future videos depending on the interest, right? The first question is obviously, in that case, what investing styles are most suitable for gaining financial independence. I think I could narrow it down to 2 styles, which I think is very good, and I'll talk about it very soon. Okay, and there is a lot of variants of the FIRE movement, like Fat FIRE, Barista FIRE, and these variants, like the COVID virus, they proliferate. Okay, so is there any credibility to these variants of the FIRE movement? You can pick and choose one that suits your kind of lifestyle, and I think that there should also be another video to just talk about these points, and of course, why other influencers are so obsessed with how much you need to draw to fund your retirement. And you find that there is this obsession with the safe rate of withdrawal from my peers. Okay, I respect them a lot, but do these discussions even make a lot of sense when people just want to, find a way to improve their lifestyles and make minor changes and nudges, right? Not everything needs to be require so much obsession. Okay, and we will talk about all this in a future video. Alright, so if you like my content, subscribe to my channel, and you will be notified when I do part 2, maybe part 3 and part 4 of this series. You can buy me a coffee if you really like my material, and if you want to listen to my life story, you can sign up for my course preview. In fact, I have a preview immediately after I create this video, okay? Or otherwise, you can just Google ERM intro, take the first link, and you can attend my presentation. And I do one every 2 weeks, right, for people to get to know me even better. And that's all for now. Thank you very much.